Okay. So what I'm going to do while folks are coming in is show these two short videos. Tell you what I'm going to do first. Let me open GoGuardian and make sure that if I send the links to you, you can actually watch them yourself. So let me do that first while folks are still coming in. So again, if you've already finished your case study and submitted it, the next unit is examining remains. What we're going to do today is look at two videos, one on trace evidence and one on physical evidence. And I'd say this because that's what your report was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be about what was the trace evidence and physical evidence in this case, and how did it solve the case, or how did it help solving the case? All right, that's it. All right, so let me see if let's, okay, let's try this. Okay, I wanted to wait before I send it because if I send it after folks come in, I'll have to send it again. All right, I sent a link for the first video, which is physical evidence. Let me know if you can open that, and if you can't open it, then I'll show it, share screen. But if you can watch it individually, that would be good. Okay, thank you, Nika. All right, so you all watched that first one, and then I'm going to put, in a minute, I'm going to repeat the link because there's still folks coming in. But then I'm going to send a second link. So this first link is on trace evidence, and the second link is on, sorry, the first link is on physical evidence. The second link will be on trace evidence. Okay, you can't watch it. Oh, now it won't work. Okay, so give me a minute to finish letting folks in, and I will pull it up on share screen. I just wanted to test to see if that was going to work. All right, so my volume is up as high as it can go. If you have trouble hearing it, please try turning up your volume. But okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I don't know that Anybody else comes in there, just have to catch up.
One of the most important aspects of any crime scene is the physical evidence it produces. The goal of crime scene investigators that will link a suspect to the crime and eventually lead to solving the case. Depending on the type of crime, almost anything could be considered physical evidence. The only real requirement is that it aids in the process of fulfilling the burden of proof.
All right, I did want to stop it there. That was part of your purpose. It's designed to fulfill the burden of proof. Remember, all this is being taken to court. So the whole point of collecting evidence is not just to collect evidence so that you can take it to court, line it up against your suspect, and actually succeed because you've collected it properly.
Once pertinent physical evidence is found, great care must be taken to ensure its validity in the future. Failure to follow specific guidelines when processing physical evidence could render it inadmissible in a court of law, ultimately reducing the chances of solving the case. Upon discovery of a crime scene, and as soon as it's safe to do so, actions must be taken to secure the scene by keeping non-essential persons away, as well as taking other precautions to preserve potential evidence in its original condition. These efforts should be initiated by the first officers arriving at the scene as soon as it's practical and continue until all evidence can be processed. The collection of physical evidence should be carried out very carefully and only by properly trained personnel. Various methods of documenting, packaging, and accounting for evidence should be used based on agency guidelines. Each piece of evidence should be considered separately when deciding on the best and most appropriate method of collection. Numerous types of bags, boxes, cans, tubes, and other containers are available to meet these needs. Upon successful documentation and collection of the evidence, a process known as the chain of custody must be implemented immediately. The chain of custody is a chronological written record of anyone who comes in contact with the evidence, along with the reason and any notable changes in the condition. These procedures are necessary to show that unbroken control has been maintained and that the evidence collected at the scene will be the same evidence presented at any criminal proceedings. If the chain of custody reveals any periods that are questionable, the evidence can be considered compromised and be deemed inadmissible in a court of law.
Okay, so that's the first one. So again, proper collection. So what you're looking for is to make sure that you collect it properly, store it properly, and hold on. Not trying to do that one. Okay, next one I want you. And then make sure that it is, because if it's not done properly, they can kick it out of court. And even though your suspect, hold on. So even though your suspect is definitely guilty and you know he's guilty, everybody knows he's guilty, based on how you collected the evidence, they can throw that evidence out of court. And if that's the only thing you've got to tie the person to that case, then they can go free. So how you collect it, what you collect is definitely important. All right, so that one was on physical evidence. This one is trace evidence. And remember, trace evidence is just little things that are not necessarily obvious to the eye, but can be extremely important. All right, for those of you who just came in, this is kind of a review activity. We're just reviewing the physical and trace evidence. If you have not completed your case study, it's due today. So you should be working on making sure that that gets turned in today. GBI.
Scientists with the trace evidence section of the GBI Division of Forensic Sciences have eyes for details. Theirs is tedious work, examining, in some cases, microscopic evidence such as hairs, fibers, glass, paints, plastics, and polymers. They also provide other services, including fracture match examinations and general materials identification. With the diverse type of testing this section provides, it's important that evidence submitted to the lab be collected and packaged correctly. Everything brought to the trace evidence section must be handled in a way that prevents loss and/or contamination. Nothing should exit or enter the evidence bags after they are sealed. And the best way to preserve evidence integrity is to make sure that the bags are sealed properly at the crime scene. Tape is generally used to seal containers. The tamper-evident tape serves two purposes. One is to ensure the container is sealed by placing the tape across the entire opening of the container, and also to provide an indication if someone has gained entry into the container by breaking the seal. However, in some instances, the tamper-evident tape may not be strong enough to make a secure seal. In those instances, a more aggressive tape, such as packing tape, may be used to secure the container and tamper-evident tape placed over the packing tape. The person packaging the evidence should place their initials across the tape and onto the package. Contents, for example, John Smith's clothing. Date, time, location, and person's name collecting and packaging the evidence should also be included on the package or container. Those items that are too large to package in a container, such as vehicle bumpers, doors, bicycles, etc., should have the areas of interest protected by covering with paper or something suitable to prevent loss or contamination. As a general rule, items from suspects, victims, and related crime scenes must never be placed in the same room or vehicle unless appropriately packaged and sealed. Once sealed, never open evidence containers prior to submission. It is also preferred that the evidence not be examined by local agencies prior to submission to the crime lab. If it has been examined and or potentially contaminated, examinations for hair and fiber may not be performed by the GBI lab. Consideration should be taken to avoid potential contamination and loss of trace evidence. Evidence once processed will not be processed a second time at the lab. Known head and pubic hair standards may be collected using appropriate labeled bags supplied with the GBI Sexual Assault Evidence Collection Kit or Hair Evidence Collection Kit. Vendor information can be provided by contacting the crime lab or checking our vendor resource list. An adequate hair standard contains a minimum of 25 hairs randomly sampled to represent the variation of characteristics within a single person's hair. Hair standards should be collected using a fine-toothed comb by repeatedly combing the area of interest, for example, the head or pubic area. If it is not possible to obtain 25 hairs by combing, additional hairs may be obtained. The subject may assist or perform the collection of additional hairs. It is important to collect hair standards as close as possible. May complicate conclusions drawn from microscopical comparisons. It is required that clothing from suspects and victims be packaged separately to avoid contamination. It is preferable that clothing items from a single person also be packaged separately. This may fibers are expected on the outer garments, but not on the undergarments. In the area of paints and plastics, samples must be separated from those that are known. Likewise, samples taken from multiple areas of the vehicle or dwelling are required to be packaged individually. Never place samples directly in plastic bags or envelopes. Instead, use the paper pharmaceutical fold. It's good for anything small and is simple to make. Here's how it's done. Take a clean piece of paper and place your sample in the center. Carefully fold the paper in half like this. Make sure not to push the sample out the ends. Next, fold the top edges of the paper down about ½ inch and crease. Then fold the top down another ½ inch. This step locks in the evidence and prevents loss. Fold the entire sheet in half once more and fold the tube in thirds. Tuck one end into the other, inserting the end between the outermost two layers of paper. The final step is to seal with tape around the center seam. Now the paper fold can be labeled and placed in an evidence bag and sealed. Never place paint directly into an envelope. It will leak. When collecting paint standards from vehicles, make sure to take an undamaged sample from within an inch of the damaged area on each separate damaged panel of the vehicle. Paint samples can be collected using a clean, sharp scalpel or knife to carve off all layers of paint down to and including the substrate. When possible, submit the entire item or portion of an item rather than disturbing the paint smear. Glass comparisons typically involve the analysis of small fragments of glass which may transfer to clothing or other surfaces and objects due to the fragmentation of breaking glass. A glass service would also be necessary when requesting the comparison of fiberglass insulation. It is important to collect standard glass from known sources such as windows or objects which have been broken. These should be packaged separately whenever possible. Fiberglass standards need to be collected from all contact areas at the scene. Even though the fiberglass may appear the same from one location to another, the fiberglass properties could be different, even within several feet. Another glass service provided by the trace evidence section is the determination of direction of force used to break a non-tempered window. This service can determine from which side a window is broken. If submitting broken glass for a determination of direction of force, remember to mark either the inside or outside surfaces of any glass remaining in the frame before removal, or remove the entire frame with any intact glass. The window must be reconstructed. Therefore, all of the broken glass needs to be submitted. Items such as clothing that need glass analysis should be packaged in paper bags. Larger items may be packaged using butcher paper and properly sealed to prevent loss or contamination. Smaller items may be packaged in small plastic canisters with lids. All trace evidence, questions, and standard samples should be packaged and sealed separately. Ziploc bags are useful for collection of standard glass pieces. However, a cardboard box or other suitable container should also be used to protect the individuals handling the glass evidence from any sharp edges or further breakage. Among the many services this section provides are fracture matches. Broken, torn, or separated items submitted to trace evidence must be packaged separately and in a way that prevents further damage. Also keep in mind that care must be taken when it comes to sharp objects like knives or glass. To prevent injury to those who will be handling the packages, always cover the sharp ends with cardboard before placing the objects in bags. And again, trace evidence's golden rule applies here. Items that are submitted for comparison should be bagged separately. The general materials request can encompass an assortment of evidence for identification or characterization. Examples include corrosive materials, bank security dye bombs, fire extinguisher residue, and pepper spray examinations. It is advised that you call ahead to see whether the crime lab can assist you with your particular request. During the discharge of a firearm, escaping gases from the weapon deposit gunshot residue, or GSR, on the skin of the shooter's hand, on the clothing of the shooter, and on other objects located in close proximity to the shooter. Included in this gaseous cloud of residue are particles composed primarily of primer residue. Analysis and characterization of the residue for the trace elements, lead, barium, and antimony, are used to indicate if the suspect has fired, handled, or been in close proximity to a weapon when it was fired. Time is of great importance. Sampling the subject as close to the event time as possible is critical if gunshot residue is to be preserved for analysis. Always use the pair of gloves included in the GSR kit. This prevents contamination of the test. Both stubs and swabs. Of vital importance is the negative control swab. This swab ensures the person performing the test did it correctly. Failure to utilize the negative control swab may affect the results of testing. For the most up-to-date information or answers to any questions this presentation did not address, go to the GBI Division of Forensic Sciences website.
Okay. All right. I've got a question. See if you were listening. What is the trace evidence golden rule? You can type it in the chat. No, don't tamper with evidence is not the answer. Oh, try again. What is the golden rule for trace evidence? But thank you, Emmanuelin, for that's a good answer, but that's not the. Isaiah said leave trace evidence, leave trace of contact. No, that's not it, but that's a good answer too. Let the evidence tell the story. And it should. Yes, it should. But that's not the golden rule. Anybody else? Yes, every contact does leave a trace. That's true, but that's not the golden rule. What I'm looking for is what you should do when you're collecting. What is the golden rule for collecting trace evidence? But yes, it is important that every piece of evidence tells a story. Everything you do leaves a trace. That's true. Photograph, wearing gloves. Yes, you do need to wear gloves. And photograph is one of them. What else do you need? Don't touch anything after you remove the object from the scene. That's not it either, but that's important also. Write everything down, document it. Yes, secure. All right, how are we securing the evidence? You're getting close, Anika. How are we securing the evidence? Golden rule. How do you secure the evidence? Akia, sorry. In bags. And what else? So you want bags, you want to put everything in one bag? Separately, then seal it with tape. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So everybody needs to write that down. The golden rule for collecting evidence is to collect everything separately. You want to bag every piece of evidence separately. In other words, you're not going to a crime scene and putting all the evidence that you find from that scene in one big collection bin. Every type of evidence is collected separately. And then, like Emmanuel said, you want to seal it with a special tape, and then you want to document it. You want to, after you've sealed it properly, you want to write on there where it was collected, how it was collected, and the time it was collected. Okay, so make a note of that. The golden rule is to collect the evidence separately, then seal it and document it. Okay, all right. So in the time that's left, like I said, there's a couple of you who still need to work on your case study, and I want to give you some time to do that. The rest of you need to look at, we're going to move on. So I just really want you to look at the vocabulary under human remains identification module. So look at the essential questions. How are human remains identified? What clues the investigators find to indicate a homicide rather than natural causes or accidental death? How an investigator will estimate time of death, and what phases of decomposition? What are the phases of decomposition in human remains? So that is the objective of the unit. And so I want you to take a look at these vocabulary words and get familiar with those. All right, having done that, you can also go ahead and get a head start at reading the first section. So that's for those of you who are finished. Now, I think you allowed multiple submissions. So if you've already submitted, I haven't checked them yet, go back and check to make sure, reread your case study to make sure that you answered with the objective that you were supposed to answer it with. Again, it was about the importance of trace and physical evidence, so make sure that was part of your conclusion and your discussion. Okay. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing because I need to do attendance. But everybody's got something to do, so you're either reading or finishing your case study.
Loss or
Also, I should add that there's not going to be a big exam. Your case study is a big case study, so that's the big grade for this 9 weeks. So make sure it's important that you not only that you submit it, but that you actually gave it your very best. All right, and I do want to give a heads up. GoGuardian does indicate when your monitor, when you've just logged in and it's left it there and walked off. And so it'll say how long you've been idle. So if you want to be counted as present for the day, I should not see that your screen has been idle for 28 minutes because we've been um, watching a video for longer than that. And I'm looking at 3 people whose video is idle. Which says to me you logged in, walked off, and you're not participating. And I also take that in mind when assignments are late and or incomplete. If you weren't logged in, then there's no grace period, no consideration for the assignment being late. Screen still says idle. All right, folks. Time's up. So I'll see you tomorrow and we will start with human remains tomorrow. So you have a great rest of your day.